I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Matt, as always, for leading us in that. I would like to introduce the board members. We are joined tonight by Meg Ludlam, Jason White, Dan Schisler, Hilda Pena Alfaro, and we have our two student board reps, Olivia Berthen Cook and Jade Burrows. We are also joined by our Superintendent Haberer and various district administrators. Thank you. We will tonight have two public comments. Our first public comment will be after agenda item A, which is the ESD's reopening plan. We are doing something a little bit different tonight with public comment. Matt is going to put in the chat window a Google document. So if you would like to go on that list for public comment, you can click on that and add your name to it. That will help us move more fluidly through that. We will also be asking for people to raise their hands, give them the opportunity that way. And you can also send us an email at board@esd401.org. When you send an email, that goes to everyone on the board and it is entered as a public record. I also would like to inform the board of something that personally happened to me that I think that you should be aware of. My husband and I made a donation to a GoFundMe account that was public. And it was in support of the Black Lives Matter mural. Our name was on it. It was recently made public on Facebook, and a comment was made that the Ellensburg School Board of Directors had made a contribution to this GoFundMe account. I clarified, I said that is me as an individual, but I wanted the board to be aware of that. That was not a board donation. That was my personal donation and my husband's donation. With that, we are on to the consent agenda.
I'll move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second it.
Oh.
Dan has moved and Jason/Meg have seconded. Is there any discussion? All right, with the roll call vote. Dan?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Hilda?
Aye.
Meg?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The consent agenda is accepted. Thank you. We are on the ESD's reopening school plan, administration item A. Ginger, I believe you're presenting on this one, and we are thankfully joined by Dr. Mark Larson for this. Thank you for joining us.
Yes. Well, we're very excited to share our overall reopening plan with you. You've seen a couple of drafts and a lot of community input from teachers, parents have really gone into putting this plan together. And I'd like to invite, we are so fortunate to have Dr. Larson, our Kittitas County Public Health Officer, here with us as well. And so I asked him if he would just kind of give us an overview of where we're at in Kittitas County right now. And anything else he'd like to share in general about opening schools safely. And then I'd like to go through the plan, and then when we open it up for public comment, we'll kind of jot down if there's questions, and then we can go back through Dr. Larson and myself and just answer any of those questions as they're presented, after they're presented, like we did the last time. It worked pretty good. So, Dr. Larson, welcome.
Good evening. Thanks for inviting me. So I'll give a little bit of overview of where we are at currently in Kittitas County, and then I will make a comment on the hard work that's been done by all the school superintendents, as well as parents and teachers and people that are trying to figure this out in our community about how to get school started safely. So we have not had any cases in Kittitas County for the last 2 days. That's a big deal because we have not had 2 days since March that we have not had any cases. So part of that is due to people in the community really grabbing a hold of the whole idea of, I'm willing to wear a mask regardless of what my political ideas are of masking, because we realize the most important thing to us as a community is getting schools started safely. So I really think that the reason our numbers are starting to go down and the reason our masking compliance has gone up is not really a change in how people feel about masking, but it's a change in how people feel about the reason that we're masking. So I think that's a really positive step. I think the community has kind of shifted to saying, you know, we need to look at what we're doing for others, not necessarily what we're doing for ourselves. So as you know, we had an outbreak way back when we were getting ready to go into phase 1 to phase 2. We had to put that movement on hold while we dealt with our outbreak at Twin City Foods. We got a hold of that and moved forward to being able to move from phase 2 to phase 3. I think history will tell us, but I think that was probably a mistake on our part, even though our numbers said that we could move into phase 3. I think we all had some mask fatigue and some COVID fatigue, and we all said, oh, we can have groups of people of up to 50, and we just let our guard down. And that's the reason we ended up having our outbreak at Prestige and Pacifica, because that outbreak came from the outside. It came from people in our community that worked in those facilities that brought that disease into those facilities. And another good piece of news is that we have not had a positive case in either one of those facilities for 2 weeks, 3 weeks for Prestige, but we've not had any new staff or residents in either one of those facilities for the past 2 weeks. So our numbers are starting to go down. We had gone from 12 cases per 100,000 per 14 days back when we moved into phase 3 of the reopening Washington plan. That was the 23rd of July, up to 382 cases per 100,000 per 14 days as of 3 weeks ago. And we've just been gradually coming down. The calculations are pretty easy, actually. You just count the number of cases that you've had in the last 14 days. That would be the number of cases per 100,000 per 14 days. And then you multiply it by 2 because we have about 50,000 people in Kittitas County. So I counted those cases this morning. The positives from KVH, our local hospital, does the lion's share of the testing in the county. We had 41 cases in the last 14 days. That gives us a incidence rate in the county of 82. The state numbers, if you went on the state website, they are actually 96.6 as of this afternoon, because we get cases that people get tested on the west side, but they live here, or they get tested in Wyoming and they live here. So, but our numbers are definitely coming down and getting close to where we could feel that we were able to start school safely. As you all realize, the document came out from OSPI and the governor's office about restarting schools, and they're using the metric of cases per 100,000 per 14 days, and that number needs to be less than 75 cases per 100,000 per 14 days to even consider reopening school at all. Between 25 and 75 cases per 100,000 is kind of a yellow light, means you could possibly try bringing K through 5 schools back, K through 5 kids back, or doing a hybrid of some kind. And then less than 25 cases per 100,000 per 14 days, you could reopen safely with lots of safety things in place, like six foot physical distancing and masking and those type of things. And the reason incidence rates are important is that's the amount of disease that's in our community. So the higher the incident rate, the more likely we're going to have a teacher come to school with COVID-19, the more likely we're going to have a child come to school with COVID-19 and spread that disease to other people in the community. There are a lot of other metrics that we can use. Kansas, for example, where I went to medical school, is using the percent positive. So that's the number of cases that you have are positive. They're using 10% as a goal. Less than 10%, you could consider opening. Less than 5% would be equivalent to, or less than 25 per 100,000. We are currently at 26.8% positive. So we are testing. We're still testing a lot, but we're still getting a lot of positives. So we have some metrics that tell us that it's really not safe to start school safely. And those are just recommendations from the state. And the reason they're from the state and OSPI, and we also have some guidance that Region 7 looked at, which is Okanagan, Chelan, Douglas, Grant County, and ourselves. It's a emergency management region. Looked at those same numbers, but we realized that there are some schools in some areas, for example, in Grant County, that are 35 miles from any other city, and they have not had any cases in comparison to us in Ellensburg, who have the lion's share of the cases. So we do have one school board in Kittitas County that has chosen that they want to start, and to do that, those school boards and those superintendents have to make an application to public health saying, here's why we think we should do that, we can do this safely, and what we are going to do to mitigate the risks that we are taking by bringing kids back. The biggest risk of bringing people back, along with just children and adults being sick, is the fact that if we have a high incidence rate in the community, it's highly likely that school will have to be shut down and we'll be doing a starting and stopping and starting and stopping, which obviously, along with all the rest of this, is disruptive to school learning. So, as I said, we have one school district that's choosing to apply for what would be considered a variance. That doesn't mean they will be successful to apply, because they have to put all these pieces in place. But that's where we're at from numbers. My concern about where we are with numbers is that Central Washington University is bringing their students back on September 5th and 6th. I can't tell you exactly how many people that they are bringing back, but the last I heard, they're planning on having 2,100 students in the dorms, first-year students in the dorms, in single rooms, and we will have another spike after that time, because that's a very difficult group of young adults to follow direction. And if you've followed what's been happening with colleges nationwide as they've tried to reopen, most of those schools have chosen to shut down, either shut down for the semester or shut down like Notre Dame did for 2 weeks to see kind of what's happening. So I would expect that to happen regardless of when school districts choose to open up. And the higher incident rates that we have would make that starting and stopping much more likely. So my recommendation still, as a health officer, is to follow the guidance of the state and follow the incident rates as a guide to opening and closing. So some new things coming down the pike in regards to testing. And I passed this on to the schools today. We may have saliva testing in the near future, which would allow us to test on a much more rapid basis, and for cheaper, it'll be about $1 a test. That particular kind of testing has a low sensitivity, which means that there's more false negatives. So the idea is you're testing more frequently, and you would capture those. If you look at what was happening in Los Angeles School District, making a decision to test all of their students coming back before school starts, that's the kind of testing that they're choosing to do. So we'll have more things coming to protect students and staff, but that's where we're at currently. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Larson. I really appreciate it. I'd like to start with just really saying a thank you. We had a lot of meetings, a lot of input from various groups of parents, staff members, even student groups around what do we need to think about as we are reopening schools. And we've talked about all the different focus groups that we had in the spring. And then we also have teams that are made, a wellness team and instructional technology team that's made up of administrators, teachers. I believe we have a few classified staff on these teams that have been meeting also to get a little more granular around what we need to do in our schools to be able to open safely. We are negotiating with EEA right now, and we'll go into negotiations soon with PSE to continue to work together to ensure that we are being as safe as we can when we start to bring our students back in. And then really a thank you to Dr. Larson. I have been able to meet with them at noon now every week for several months, but I just really appreciate we've been able to have a couple of Zooms where teachers and administrators together have been able to ask him questions. And so again, thank you so much, Dr. Larson, for your meeting with us and answering our questions, especially as they've come up as we're trying to put this plan together. So now I would like to share my screen, the actual plan. So I want to start with our board ends. We considered what are all the different things that we need to have in place to make sure that we are still supporting students with those strong academic skills, that we are giving them opportunities to apply what they're learning so that they can be successful global citizens in an ever-changing world, and working hard to ensure that we are keeping those strong connections with our students, especially in a virtual world. What you'll see in our beginning paragraph here is really that equity is a major focus. And in distance learning, we want to make sure we go back and see students who were not successful last spring in particular, and also really zero in on those subgroups that traditionally underperform the general population, and make sure that we are providing that additional support. And as soon as possible, bringing in smaller groups of these students who need that additional support, potentially, we're hoping even before we go full hybrid. So our reopening date is still September 9th. And as we talked about at our last board meeting, we'll be starting all students online, and again, being in close contact with Dr. Larson. And as he pointed out, we won't really be able to think about a hybrid model until we're at about 75 cases per 100,000 for within a 14-day or 2 consecutive time period. And I'm just so thankful that we have metrics now that we can actually use to help us determine when to open. And I know Dr. Larson was a part of being able to put that together, so thank you to him for that. And again, we also want to start working with smaller groups. We know that our first group that we need to bring back in will be our students who are on individual education plans. And I will tell you a huge, huge kudos to Patty Kimmel. She's been working night and day, burning the candle at both ends. The state and the federal government have just really thrown in a lot of different changes in a short amount of time for what needs to get done. And Patty's just been phenomenal, along with the rest of the whole special education team. So again, thank you to them. And we do hope to bring those students in as soon as we can, safely can do that. These, what you see underlined here, I not only took what the Department of Health guidelines are, OSPI, and our newest one from Kittitas County and their joint cohort, but I also looked at what are the requirements of the OSPI, because we are required to submit this plan at least 2 weeks before school starting, so we're meeting the deadline there. So I took the information that we need to give to OSPI, and I embedded it in this plan. So by approving this plan, we're also aligned with what OSPI is requiring. So this Part 1 mandatory health requirements, these were some of the major requirements from OSPI. They wanted to make sure that we were looking at these areas. So drop off and pickup plans, we definitely, these are some of the precautions. We're going to absolutely discourage adults from entering the building if at all possible, just to keep the amount of people that are going in and out of the building lower and at a very minimum. And certainly if the individual has to come into our building, will need to wear a mask and have an attestation or have a list of questions. Do you have any of the symptoms of COVID? Do you have a fever? And they're going to have to sign off if they don't have any of those things in order to be in our building. And buildings are real close to having definite drop-off and pickup plans. The idea when students get to school, they're staying in smaller groups in cohorts outside of the building, not congregating, keeping that 6-foot distancing as much as possible before they come inside. And certainly parents remaining in their vehicles as much as possible so that we're not having a lot of adults and students congregating outside of the school. Bus transportation, you heard an update from Eric earlier on what he's doing around the hybrid. We're also doing a lot around safety. The attestation, what that is really asking our parents to, there'll be an application within Skyward, which is our school information system, and we haven't seen it yet. They're still working on it. They said they'll have it at the end of August, so we'll be able to share that with you at the next board meeting. But we'll be asking parents on a daily basis to go in with that app and just really attest that their child does not have a fever and doesn't have a cough or any of those other signs and symptoms which will be listed on there. We are wanting them to do that before their kids get on the bus. On the bus, we'll try to do as much social distancing as we can. It's not quite as much of a problem because students aren't usually on a bus for very long. And as much as possible, we'll have the windows down except when it's freezing outside to get maximum circulation. And certainly there are guidelines that have been put out around sanitizing the bus. Eric's aware of those and actually started practicing that last spring and will continue to do so this year. And again, this is what I was talking about, the health screening. It's called attestation. Now we know that there's going to be instances where stuff comes up in the morning and a parent may forget to do that attestation. The student, we're not going to leave kids stranded at the bus stop, so they'd still get on the bus. But once they get to school, then if they theoretically, if the system is working the way it should, teachers will be able to look within Skyward and look at their class list and see if there's any students whose parent didn't go in to do the attestation. And then those students, ideally meeting them outside, will need to stay in a certain area. The rest of the students will go in, and then we'll have other support personnel go and work with those students to do the screening, to take the temperature, to ask the student those questions and kind of get them cleared before they go inside. So we have a process for that. Another question that was in the OSPI guidelines was that we really needed to give our employees an opportunity to identify themselves if they consider themselves high risk, and Kim put that out recently, and we're in the process of having a spreadsheet with any employee who is identifying themselves as high risk. Social distancing within the schools and the school building. The indoor, again, all the furniture is here. Now it's just a matter of getting the desks in and getting them set up so that they're 6 feet apart. And principals, we have the positive behavior intervention system, PBIS, and all of our schools, except maybe the high school, not quite as much, is using this system. And it's been a great way. We've been doing it for several years, which really focuses on teaching students those ritual and routines. And so we're going to use that same, and it involves rewards and just really intentional teaching around what are those essential rituals and routines. And so we use the PBIS system to teach the students the protocols around social distancing in the hallways when they're in the classroom, and what that's going to need to look like at lunch. For sure, they need to be sitting 6 feet apart individually at lunch, because at lunch they can't wear their masks, and so it's going to be especially essential there. You know, teachers working together with administrators will just continue to help monitor that, and everyone hold each other mutually accountable for, and for the students to really learn it, and for them to hold each other mutually accountable to ensure that we're keeping that distancing. And, you know, at the beginning of the year, asking administrators to be sure to look in every room, and if they need some district support with the furniture and getting things arranged, to let us know. But we really want to make sure everything's set up before our students get there. Food service, there are some changes in the lunch program. We will be providing meals for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. A previous document said preschool, but we checked that out, and the National School Breakfast and Lunch Program is not doing it for preschool. They're doing it for kindergarten through 12th grade. And last year, we were able to access a program called Emergency Food Distribution Program, but there are some limitations now with the federal guidelines, and they're no longer allowing us to access that fund. So we're going to need to return to this National School Breakfast and Lunch Program. Therefore, students will be charged according to their eligibility at the time of service. So unfortunately, because it's no longer supported financially by the federal government, we're no longer will be able to provide free meals to all students unless the student qualifies, and there's certain criteria for that. So when building instruction begins with the hybrid, students be offered a grab and go for the on-site, you know, if they're going to eat their lunch there, as well as meal packs that have both breakfast and lunch to be taken home for the non-contact days. So that would be a way to help provide for that one Wednesday where students are learning online, for example, or if they're an A group and they're at home when the B group is in school. Parents are going to have digital links to order their children's take-home meals, and there is a website that they can go to sign up. Meals will be given to each student who indicates a meal service in person on the hybrid days. And then students who are in the virtual academy, these are the students whose parents have said they just want to keep them at home, also have the option to order grab and go meals for pickup at the school where they're enrolled. And again, during lunches, we're going to try to, you know, mitigate that any kind of gathering together of large groups, keeping kids 6 feet apart. We may look at staggering some meal times. Principals are working on how this specifically looks in their building, but they understand these guidelines and they're putting together those real specific plans. And I've already gotten several plans, drafts of those. Hand washing, we know that that's also going to be really critical to decrease that risk of infection. And we're in the process of putting that signage up and ordering that signage so that it's up and ready to go when the students get there. We are in the process of putting those little hand squirt sanitizing things that go on the wall, dispensers in all of the classrooms, all the high use areas, the cafeterias. And certainly we're hoping to put out some videos that demonstrate a good hand washing technique, because there really is a good technique on how to make sure we get all the germs off our hands, and certainly helping young children with that. And certainly really enforcing, which should happen with the attestation process, but encouraging students and staff, they've got to stay home if they feel sick. That, just all the teaching that we need to provide for both staff and students, and the importance of wearing masks, social distancing, plus any other kind of protective equipment that might be necessary. And we want to try to take, those first 2 weeks of school to do a lot of teaching with students, but also with parents, and really encouraging parents to, to model wearing masks, when they're out in the community, and having their children wear masks. And really, if students see their parents being really conscientious about mask wearing, there's more likely that that will go over well when they need to wear masks at school, which they will be required to wear a mask while they're at school, unless they're in one of the specific categories that are outlined by the Department of Health. And that's basically what this says. We will offer a cloth mask or a shield for every student. And then every school is developing their own process for what it will look like if a student comes to school without a mask. It might look a little different at Morgan Middle School than it does at Valley View, but principals are working on a specific plan for that. We have lots and lots of masks in our storage unit, so we're ready to go with that. And certainly the difference between a mask and a shield: if you wear a mask, we know that protects other people from us. If you wear a mask and a shield, not only are you protecting yourself from other people, but the shield then protects you from other people. The mask protects other people from you. So, if teachers or any staff member wants ultimate protection, then they would probably choose to wear a mask and a shield. And we also have masks and shields available and ready to go for our staff members. But students will be required to wear their masks. If we have an issue with that, then it'll be treated just like any other kind of a disciplinary situation, following the plans that we already have in place. And we also know, there's going to be some staff members that have conditions where they are not able to wear a mask, and we have a process in place for that. And there's good recommendations that have come out from the Department of Health around that, as well as for students who may not be able to do that. We definitely have a specific cleaning regime in place, and we're using Rejuvenol, and we've shared that cleaner with Dr. Larson way early, way back in the spring, and it does have the chemicals in it that's needed to kill the coronavirus. Someone had asked about bathrooms. For the high use bathrooms, we're going to try to get those cleaned at least once during the day, as well as the evening, because bathrooms are usually cleaned every evening. There'll also be, some spray disinfectant in the classrooms, and we anticipate really teaming up with teachers and students and everyone really helping out to wipe down those surfaces. We know that there are going to be some real specific protocols that we're ready to put in place, and Kate Johnson, our district nurse, has a real specific plan that details even much more so than what's right here on what we need to do if there is a suspected case of COVID in our building. One thing that principals are looking at right now and we're aware of is we need to probably have a separate space if a student has a fever or any symptoms that could be COVID, being sent down and put in a different space than maybe at the same space where students come in to get their medications, for example. So we're still working through some of those details. If a staff member contracts COVID, there's a whole set of guidelines that was just recently put out by DOH, as well as the guidelines set out by the Kittitas County, the cohort that they have. Again, we'll have a separate space. And we would be working really closely with Dr. Larson. If there is a positive case, the community health department, then we'd work in tandem with them to do all the contact tracing. They would let us know who needs to go into quarantine, and we'd be working very closely together with them. And this Region 7 guidelines for reopening schools to classroom instruction is really the most recent that's come out. And I've really appreciated that because it's very specific to Kittitas County and the surrounding regions, and really has all of us doing those safety precautions, I think, in the same way. So I appreciate that that came out. So the second part of the plan for OSPI is the statutory education requirements. We are required to have 180 days of instruction. Our current calendar does allow for that, and we are following the law with that, and you have already adopted that academic calendar for next year. We do have a proposed weekly schedule, and a real thank you to Jen Kuntz and our instructional tech team. They worked hard in really looking at that schedule, and we still may do a few tweaks on it here and there, but overall, I think it's been received positively by our staff, and so I think we'll be ready to go with that. And OSPI just asked that we had a proposed staff ready to go. We will be required to take daily attendance, and so we just kind of put, you know, the law that we recognize that there are important attendance laws that we need to follow, and what are some of our suggested teacher actions? There'll be some different ways when students actually log in on Zoom. Will be a good way for us to be able to see, okay, who are the students? We'll probably use that as one way of taking attendance. I'm sure this is a process that will just even refine more as we actually have students in the building and we're practicing this. And we use some systems I think worked pretty well. We worked with attendance, even though the requirements weren't quite the same in the spring. I think we kept a good track of our kids last spring as well. Learning standards, we do ask all of our teachers to align their instructions with the Washington State Learning Standards. And last spring, we started that process, especially at the elementary school and somewhat at secondary, of identifying what are those critical standards that students need to know. Because we know in a virtual environment, it's important to just really hit the most essential standards and go deep with those, rather than having a broad, trying to cram a whole bunch of different topics in that may or may not be related to the state standards. The grading process, our proposal to you on that is to stay with the process that's currently in policy with the current procedure, except we would like to add this piece here, and teachers have done this before anyway, but at least it's a way of really signaling to our parents and to our teachers that, you know, we encourage them to do this as they see necessary, and that is they can assign an I or an incomplete to assignments as discerned necessary. This not only to assignments, but if they had enough of those, could even end up as an I, you know, at the semester. But certainly we know that we need to take care of those before the end of the year. And we also put a real specific plan in place and taking care of those incompletes that happened last spring. And those were taken care of pretty much throughout this summer. Communication with families. We are in the process of kind of putting together community engagement. Right now, we feel like we've had good community engagement with all of the focus groups that we've done, and we'll continue to do that. And right now, part of our community engagement is the use of some more. I had over 8,000 views on the last super update, the June one that I did, or I'm sorry, the July one. And so I do think that it is reaching our community and our parents. And the nice thing about some more is it easily translates into any language that is necessary. So, you know, which of course includes our Spanish speaking parents. Blackboard does the same. When we send out communication on Blackboard, and we've gone back, actually, you can check and see how effective it is as far as how many parents are opening it. Not only do we send it as an email, but we've also been sending it as a text with a link that people can click on. And the feedback I've gotten is that that text especially has been very helpful. So by sending it both ways, I think we've been able to reach more parents. Some schools, I think, are still using a program called Remind, which is also kind of like Blackboard, but maybe more specific to the school. They can kind of customize it a little bit more. And then, of course, email. being really the primary ways that we are communicating with parents. And of course, we'll do the paper and pencil mail where we need to. And it certainly is, and we'll continue to have that practice of making sure that what we put out is translated into Spanish. And if we find that we have another group, a larger group of students, then we can look at doing that as well. We have language line right now as well, where if an administrator or teacher needs translation and Diana or anybody else in their building, if they're not able to translate, they can call this language line and they can immediately have a translator in whatever language they need on the phone to be able to help translate. And that's been a huge help. Kelly has had some great leadership in that area. Appreciate his efforts. We also bought the headphones for if we have a large family meeting when we finally end up going back in person. We'll be able to use those so that a translator can be speaking into a microphone. It goes straight into the headphones as somebody else is speaking to a general group. So last is part 3, which were some of the additional expectations that OSPI had. And that is, what kind of summer learning opportunities did we have? And we did have summer school for our high school students. And we plan on doing some services for our students who are on individual education plans. Originally, when we were at like 200 cases per 100,000, when we were working with Dr. Larson at the time, we just really felt like it wasn't safe even to bring kids in right away, like beginning of August. And now that our cases are going down, we're hoping to be able to bring some of our special education students, our students who are on individual education plans back in early September based on the needs that are identified in their IEP and based on what the IEP team determines. OSPI also asked about universal screening for both social emotional as well as for academic needs. And we are going to be using the MAP assessments. And just as a reminder, MAP does measure academic growth. And we did do MAPS testing last fall. So I'm excited that we can do that this fall. At least we can get some comparison with students between the 2 fall sessions and just see, who are some of the students who probably just grew like crazy in spite of having to go virtual in the spring, and then who are those students who struggled, and then really zeroing in on those students, especially after we have that MAPS data, to make sure that we're putting interventions in place for them. We are working with counselors. We did purchase Second Step for all of our students. I think it was K through 8. And Second Step is social emotional learning. And I know like at Morgan Middle School, they're using this curriculum during advisory. And at the elementary school level, they are doing it when they were doing community circles. They kind of have their own version of advisory. There are some I think some nice questions that we can be asking students that are incorporated within that curriculum, as well as our community circle protocol, really encouraging teachers to see how we can support them in being able to do that community circle virtually, but especially when we are able to start bringing in students, even when we bring them in smaller groups. And then of course, overall wellness is really important to us because here in ESD, we do take a whole child approach, and that health and wellness is important. So we want to encourage students as much as our cases of COVID in our county allow to be able to still do some extracurricular, but to be outside exercising. And our specialists have done a wonderful job, and our PE teachers of getting kids up and moving and giving them ideas and games they can play with their parents and their siblings to get them outside and moving. And that would be true for the virtual academy, really giving them access to some of those same videos to encourage that overall health and wellness. Technology, internet connectivity. We had a scare there with technology. We had ordered way back in the spring, along with everybody else, computers through Dell. And last week, Mike got a call and they said, no, we're not going to be able to deliver them until almost the end of September. We were like, no, that can't happen. And really a huge shout out to Mike Welch. He used every single contact that he had. And by the end of the day, he was able to find another provider who can give us the same number of computers. And they'll be here on time. At least they said they guaranteed it. So I'm assuming they will be by the end of August. So we still are planning on opening up September 9th. We use the tech levy funds for that, which was the overall goal. We will truly be one-to-one when those come, which is of course what we need if all students are starting with the distance learning. And right away, principals are already looking at who are those families. They did surveys with their families last year to see who had connectivity and who didn't. And they're already kind of preparing those to send those out ahead of time to find out who has them, who doesn't, even through a text, because even if somebody doesn't have internet connectivity, many of our families, if they don't have a computer or internet, they have a phone. And so through that text, we also got a lot of good information on that. We also are aware, at least of the families that were with us last year that didn't have any, and we'll contact them either by phone or home visit to see what they might need for this year to make sure that our learning continues for all students. As you know, we were able to show you our learning management system with Schoology, and we're excited about that. And we are going to have some good time at the beginning of the year for teachers, whole days for them to do some professional development. Our ESD is also offering free professional development for Schoology right now, and Jen has been working with teachers to get that information out and organize that. So we definitely have a plan in place. Edgenuity as well, being able to spend some of those lid days at the beginning of the year so that we can give teachers as much support as possible. And I believe we've already even been able to open up Schoology or close to it to allow teachers who want to kind of get inside of Schoology and start learning it if they so desire. And then last, we also, another training that we need to have and plan to have before school starts is around safety, all the precautions that we're going to need from classified and certified staff, ProTech, in order to be able to open school safely. So that is the overall plan, and would definitely entertain any questions from the board, and then look forward to any questions or comments that we might hear through community comment.
Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments? Dan?
Yeah, a couple. You just mentioned training for the teachers. Is there going to be some training for parents so they can access Schoology and Edgenuity?
Great question, Dan. Yes, absolutely. Once we kind of get things in place for teachers, we plan to get going right away to help our parents. And for that matter, we're also partnering together with our daycare providers to also understand the platform so that they can support our students that are, because we have some child care centers whose parents have decided to have their children there all day, and we want to make sure that we are supporting our child care folks as well so that they can support our students.
And so parents should keep alert for
Yes.
when they might be able to find out about stuff. Good.
Yep.
And I know that in the spring, we had some pretty widespread food distribution. How is that going to be different during the online education that we're starting with, then also during the hybrid form?
I'm going to ask Billy Kronbauer to respond to you because he'll be able to give you more detail on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so Alexander and I have recently sat down and and she's shared with me her plan for the two different models. So when we are remote and every student is remote, the plan will be that there will be a bulk meal pack provided for students that qualify. And there will be 1 day a week that they will provide these bulk packs, and the bulk packs will be breakfasts and lunches for 5 days. There will be even some meals in there that they can cook in their own home or heat up and have as a warm meal for those. So they're planning on doing that, and there's a kit price. So it'll be a bulk product. They're planning on having 3 sites for curbside pickup: the high school, the middle school, and Mount Stewart. And the reason why those sites have been chosen is because the high school and the middle school are close enough to some elementary schools that some of those families can go there. And then Mount Stewart's kind of standalone. So there won't be transportation at this point to various parks for this delivery. It will be a pickup process.
And it will be for qualified students.
And it will be only for, well, no, that's not true. I mean, free and reduced, obviously. And then any other student that wishes to purchase at full price, they can do that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. And the Virtual Academy kids are also eligible to do that. So this plan that we're devising for remote will probably stay in effect for the Virtual Academy kids all year long. So because they'll never be coming into buildings. Once the hybrid program kicks into gear, then we will be providing food to students on the days that they are at school. So if you're an A student, you will receive food on an A day, the Monday and the Thursday. And then if you're a B student, it'll be Tuesday and Friday. And then there will be grab and go bags for just 2 or 3 days before they pick up their next set. So they won't get 5 days in a row once the hybrid starts. And we will be providing hot meals while kids are at school attending hybrid.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had one other comment, and that is about the attestation. We're gonna have parents not knowing what that's about, and I mean, I've shuffled 3 kids out the door in the morning, and it's pretty frantic trying to get them all out. And I mean, you're adding something there to the parents. We're going to have a huge learning curve and a lot of people standing in the hall getting checked.
Well, and I think to your point, Dan, yeah, we're going to do a lot of advanced training with parents and contacting parents about the process, reminders, etc. So that it's just kind of like getting conditioned to call in when your child is sick, or it's just one of those other ritual and routines for parents. But I think once they get used to it, my understanding is it's a pretty easy process of just going on and clicking and you're done. But yeah, you're right. It'll be another learning curve for sure.
Okay, thank you.
I do see you, Hilda. Can we, I think Meg had some questions and then Hilda. Is that okay? I think Meg was off mute, and then Meg, do you have questions?
Yeah, I have 2 questions, one of which you may not know the answers to, but one of them is, is the staffing working out in the sense of teachers getting assigned as virtual or non-virtual, or, just so that everything is covered by, and also accommodating the teachers' needs? That's one question. The other one is another kind of special needs group would seem to be the people who didn't really participate last spring, and are they being reached out to in any special way?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what principals are in the process of doing right now, is looking at, who were the students that were successful last year and who wasn't, who went off the radar screen. And those are the students we want to really zero in on at the beginning of the year, and could be candidates potentially for bringing those smaller groups of students back in. And, yeah, I think in working with principals overall, I think teachers going into the virtual or the hybrid, I think has worked out fairly well. Kelly, do you want to add anything to that? Because Kelly and Jen really were took the reins on that and just did a great job with it.
No, I think you covered it. That's what I would say.
Okay.
Okay.
Meg, did you have any other questions? Okay, Hilda?
Yes, well, I'm happy to see this plan that is well structured. And I have some questions regarding the mask. Are they going to be disposable ones, or the students need to wash them? And how often do they need to wash them, or how is it going to work?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that's going to be part of the teaching that we need to do as well. Ideally, students to be wearing the cloth masks, and they really do need to be washed every day. So it's be another kind of habit to get into, like brushing our teeth. I've had to kind of already do that with some of my cloth masks at home, just really getting used to that and washing it. Just really a thank you so much to the Kittitas County Health Network, where they were able to collect together some more masks and donated those to us. So we may even have enough for, you know, every student to possibly have 2 cloth masks and maybe be able to trade them out. And those are some of the fine details that we need to work out. But yeah, it's going to be another routine that we'll just have to, all of us get used to, but especially our students.
And I also would like to know if there is a plan in place regarding what is going to happen if a teacher results positive or has COVID, because he's going to be or she is going to be like out of work like for a long period of time. So what is going to happen then?
Yeah, typically when somebody gets COVID, you know, they're on like that 14-day quarantine to get better. And we'd be working closely together with the public health department to see, first of all, you know, I know that Dr. Larson would work together with us to do any contact tracing to see, you know, who else came into close contact with that staff member. And then through that process, we would together make determination, you know, do we need to close down a whole classroom? Is it the whole school, you know, or is it, you know, who had the closest contact with that student, and then or staff member, and then we would just be following those guidelines to help support them during that time period.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions or clarification?
I had just a quick question too. So in this report, it does, the report is basically all about the hybrid AB model, but we're starting the new year as with online instruction. So, and I think I understand why this report, because OSPI is requesting it to be submitted. I think the piece that I'm missing, and maybe it could be a concern, is that I think COVID has really made us all challenge our adaptability strength, meaning that things constantly change and we have to adapt to it. And so what I'm just wondering, if as an educator, as a teacher, if I'm planning, I'm like, okay, now I'm going to be online, but any minute I have to be ready to switch to hybrid AB, like that would cause me a lot of anxiety. So I would just like to hear, is there a plan to kind of establish when this transition would take place? What I heard from Dr. Larson is his assumption is with central students coming back that we're going to see another spike. So if that's the case, it seems like that we would be planning to stay online for a longer period of time. And I would just want the teachers to properly plan for that. I'd want the parents to properly plan for that. So I wouldn't want these things surprised later. So is there a plan for that, Ginger?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And Dr. Larson, I'd love for you to jump in on this as well. I asked Dr. Larson, the million-dollar question, could he predict, when he thought the cases might go low enough to be able to do hybrid? And at the time, Dr. Larson, I think I remember you saying it's probably going to take 4 to 6 weeks for that case load to really get down to that level. And so right now, and then I'd love to hear what your opinion is now, Dr. Larson, because I know it kind of changes based on the trends. But I think we could safely say that we would be in distance learning for at least the first 4, even possibly 6 weeks, to really ensure that that level gets down to where we need to, at least the first 4 weeks. But Dr. Larson, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, and Jason, I think you brought up a really good point, and both about stress of change and also our ability to adapt, which are both things that can be worked on. So my prediction on cases going back up is that I think that within the first 10 days of the students coming back at Central, we will have more cases. I mean, just looking at what's happening nationwide. So our numbers are going to stay level for a while. And even though, we've come down, we haven't come down into the 50, into a 40 range, somewhere in the middle of that 25 to 75 range. And so I think looking at 4 to 6 weeks as a reasonable period of time to reevaluate whether or not you're ready to move into a hybrid model. Some of that's going to depend on how the students have done doing online learning. Some of it's going to depend upon how the parents have done doing online learning. And so, but I think saying, okay, well, we're gonna switch into this in 2 weeks after school starts, I think that would be a bad idea, because nobody will have gotten settled into what they're doing. Some Easton School District has chosen to look at it in 4 to 6 weeks. The last time that I talked to them, the school superintendent in Cle-Elum-Roslyn is looking at it as, we're going to do this for the semester and see how it goes. It's going to be a day-to-day project to evaluate how the students and parents are doing, but I think the decision has to be made with a little longer vision in place, and probably 6 weeks is probably a realistic way to look at that.
And Dr. Larson, there was, I think it was from the DOH, a recommendation when bringing students back to potentially look at bringing elementary students back even before secondary. I know there's some variation on what's being said as far as younger children, maybe being less likely to carry the disease as older children, but that varies based on what you read, but mainly that the younger children, getting them back in school sooner might be a priority over secondary. Because we actually had this discussion with administrators and said, well, do we say 4 to 6 weeks? Do we say 6 weeks? At 6 week, we're going to look at elementary, and at 9 week, we're going to do secondary. Do we set some definite times? And the problem with that is then we went into that kind of discussion, because for the high school, we probably want to do 9 weeks. Same with middle school. Elementary, we're kind of feeling like, we really want to get our kids back as soon as we can. We were trying to be consistent, is it okay for secondary to do something different than what elementary would do? Because we've been trying to be consistent. So we had that conversation and then decided, well, it's probably going to be 4 to 6 weeks anyway. And to your point, Jason, we're not going to just announce, oh, by the way, we're all going hybrid now, and let's just all, get on it. We're going to be working really closely together with teachers, with principals, and say, okay, if it looks like the cases are going down, do we take like even a 2 to 3 week time period to get adjusted and really have people feel good and feel ready to switch into a hybrid. And I think that's kind of what you were concerned about too, Jason, is like, what's the preparatory time period? And absolutely, we're not going to just, switch into it if it just happens to fall at 75 and oh, but now we can do it. And I would say, we'll need support from the board for that as well, because, our parents, as you saw with the surveys, they're very interested in getting students back into schools. And we are very interested in doing that as well, but we want to make sure that we can do it as safely as we can. And I know for me, I would prefer to do that when I know that the cases are lower, there's less disease in our community, and really waiting for that and working together closely with Dr. Larson for him to say, yep, I think we're getting to where we could probably start looking at that and then start preparing the system for that. Does that kind of answer your question, Jason?
It does. I just have one quick follow-up. So, and again, I think after I've talked with a few parents, or parents have kind of sought me out, and I think one of the things that I heard was we have parents who are planning for daycare, planning to, they're trying to make all these arrangements, right? And the last thing, I think it's really the responsibility of the district to kind of foresee what things will be happening. So it's hard for me not to say, like, I think it would be a response. I mean, this might be a little bit too, I'm trying to come up with words that aren't quite as strong, but I think it might be a little bit irresponsible of the district if we're just going to kind of go by the seat of our pants and kind of say, well, we'll test us at 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks. I think we really should come up with some set dates that can be public, so that way, if I'm a parent, I know, like, okay, the district's they're gonna be checking in with the health department on this date and can provide us with some more information. Because what I keep seeing in our community, and I'm sure, Mark, you're seeing this every day with all the negative sort of comments, but I think I don't want to feed into the chaos. I think we need to provide more and more structure with facts, with data, with science. So
So let me ask Dr. Larson that question. If we said, because based on my conversation with principals, I think I could say that, and I'd be happy to add it to the plan, that we could say, that in ESD, we're going to take the first quarter, the first 9 weeks, to just do online, kind of wait and see what happens with the cases, knowing that with the central students coming back in, there might be a greater chance of that happening. What would you think about that, Dr. Larson, as kind of predicting, trying to be as safe as we can about things?
So a couple of things. One, I would be very cautious about giving parents a date and saying, we will do this at this time, because it's way too uncertain. Look at Idaho, who went through their phases 1 through 4 on a 3-week cadence. They tried to make that straightforward, and they didn't take other things into account, and things have gone really southward for them. So I think you'd have to, and I certainly understand parents wanting to know. You could easily say, we're going to go a quarter, and parents would have the opportunity to plan a little bit better. That would be a safer bet. You could also take something, use that as we're going to take a longer view of this and give you an opportunity to change, but or to plan. But the other issue to consider is some of those younger kids are going to really need to be in school. And most of us are looking at the K through 5 school kids as being lower risk. It's not necessarily that they don't get disease, but they certainly don't get disease as significant as the older kids. And you're much more likely to be able to put those kids in a pod and keep them in a more enclosed environment, so they're not infecting so many others, and would allow schools to continue. And so those are the reasons to start with the K through 5, which I definitely am in support of. I just think I'd be really careful at giving parents a date that we're going to go into a hybrid model by Halloween, for example, because I think you'd be setting parents up for disappointment.
Yeah, I agree, Mark. Thank you for that. I was not saying that at all. I think that would only cause more havoc and chaos. But I think just my last note, and of course I'm one member on the board, so I don't want to overwhelm this, but I think what it does make sense is like to have the district to have a date to say we will reevaluate this during this week, and then we will come up with a response based off. I mean, if Ginger, if you and Mark are meeting every week, then my thought would be is like this can be scheduled where you're reevaluating based off of all the information that you're getting, and then you're being transparent to our public about what your plan is. And that's, our board stands on transparency, and this is a prime example of where I think we need to be doing that. We need to be thinking about the needs of our community and taking that very seriously.
So Jason, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah, I'm not clear as to what you're wanting.
Yeah, because I'm also unclear. I'm wondering, how does that look different than our superintendent update every 2 weeks, where she updates us on meeting with Dr. Larson, meeting with area superintendents, and taking into account what COVID's doing in our area? I just don't,
Sure, here's my quick answer to that. If we go back to 9/11, if we're watching the news every single day, it overwhelms us, right? So if we're waiting for Ginger's weekly report every single week of like, will this be the week that they decide if we do not? What I'd say is, what I'm hearing is there's a 4 to 6 week window. Why are we saying we're gonna just live in this every single day? Let's come up with a date that seems reasonable, based off of science and off of data and all the politics that are involved, and then to make it transparent that you reevaluate and go from there. Anyway, I know it's just my voice, so I'll stop, but that's just where I'm at.
no, your voice is important, and that's an important discussion point. So thank you for clarifying that. I'm beginning to grasp a little bit of it.
So I'm not grasping it quite yet, but I want to grasp it. So Jason, are you saying then, which, you know, I pretty much do monthly anyway, but to be more specific around, like, let's say in 4 weeks, and we could easily write this in there and it would, you know, I think it would be a good addition. So I like this idea that we say in 4 weeks, we're going to make that determination, or really, I mean, we look at the data every week to see where we're at, but for our public to say, okay, at the end of 4 weeks, we're going to look at all the data, and, you know, right now this would be our prediction based on, you know, and so maybe it's more like the community and our parents can know, okay, once a month, at the end of each month, we're going to be really reevaluating all of this data and making a prediction. Is that kind of what you're thinking? So that people know, like, when is that time?
Yes, I mean, I think, right, what I'm hearing
sense.
is you're setting a timeline, right, for parents to understand, and not only that, for teachers. I mean,
Right.
Teachers have to plan so far in advance, and if they're planning in advance and then like, just kidding, we're gonna shift this, like, I think it would be better to plan ahead as far out as you can, based on that information.
Meg, and then Dr. Larson, please.
Okay, I think what Jason and Dr. Larson are saying is, don't promise a date when we might open, but promise a date when we will, say that whatever we're doing right now is going to last for 4 weeks. And then at 4 weeks, we'll look at it and we'll say, and then whatever we're going to do then is going to last for another 4 weeks, or whatever it is, rather than saying we expect to open at that time. We just say what we're doing now is going to last for a certain duration, and then we'll reevaluate and not promise anything, but to say the next time we'll you know, this plan is good for a certain period of time.
Dr. Larson?
Yeah, I understand what Jason is saying, and one thing I really like about it is his point about 9/11. As somebody who looks at the data all day, every day, that's not doesn't necessarily lower my anxiety level. So I think for parents to say, hey, I can shut this off and I can spend the time with my kids and I don't have to be looking for an answer from the school board every week or every day, I think would be really healthy.
Ginger, do we have a clarification point in this document?
Yeah, what I'd like to do is, as we go through for my superintendent report, I'm going to go in on this document. I'll pull up the Word document piece of it and show you the wording that we could insert so that you guys have that. Just to make sure that I'm clear with what you're asking for, but I think I am now, and I think that's a great idea. I think it's a good addition.
Board, Hilda, Dan, did you want to add anything or have anything to say?
I just had another question. I don't know if this would be valuable or not, but I know when we had those fires a couple years ago, Lincoln and Mount Stewart had big air quality problems. And I don't know if that's something that we should be concerned about. And actually, part of the problem is that I think the regulations at that time required outside air to be pulled into the HVAC systems as routine, and there weren't filters on them or anything like that. So this would be kind of the opposite problem, because if we have outside air coming in, it's probably a little healthier. But I'm wondering about air purifiers or air cleaners or something like that. Would it be of benefit to have some of those in at least those two schools?
Brian, could you speak to that for us?
Well, they're all the questions that we've asked, Dan, and I think if Dr. Larson was on, I'd like to defer to him on that for advice, because you're right, with Mount Stewart and Lincoln, we bring in outside air to freshen the air inside. And that was a problem when the outside air was smoky outside, and then we brought it inside. It was unhealthy for students. But as you say, this is the opposite problem. And the more fresh air, the better. And I know that our air handling systems are in the other buildings are all filtered. I just don't know. I mean, I'd have to listen to Dr. Larson's viewpoint on how much this disease gets transferred throughout our air handling system.
So Brian, that's the $1 million question. So we have been talking about that, and I've reached out to Holly Erdman, who's our school inspector, and reached out to the indoor air quality advisor at the state. And I think what we need to get people to do is to come into those schools and take a look. I too was involved, unfortunately, in that whole fire thing with Lincoln a couple of years ago. And so I remember that well. The big question is, we know the disease is droplet, is transmitted by droplet. That's the reason we're wearing masks. But there is a certain amount of science that shows that it does get transmitted to some extent as an aerosol. And so that's where ventilation is really important. And so the question is not answered yet, but I have it was yesterday or the day before, I sent a request to the state to send somebody in to evaluate specifically Lincoln and Mount Stewart, but other schools that we might have that we want to take a look at. So that will happen. I'm not sure what the solution is going to be for that, but you're right, more air coming in. The issue now is that we've got fires happening too. So we got two things happening at the same time. So do you open the windows or do you close the windows? And right now we don't know. But
yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
Board, are there any other questions or clarifications?
So Tasha, may I share my screen? I have the wording that we could insert in there, just to make sure I'm on the right track with it.
Yes, you have the, yep, okay, so you have privileges, right?
So let me know if this is kind of what you're thinking. And I've got it right here. I can just make changes, and then that way we know what we'd be inserting in there, so that hopefully we can still move forward with a vote. So what if we put something in there, and I would put it where right under this where it's talking about reopening when we, this data as well as like the smaller groups, and then have this as the wording. The district will communicate with all stakeholders at the end of each month and share their review of the data related to COVID-19 cases in Kittitas County and the ability of the district to move to a hybrid AB model. A prediction will be shared with stakeholders at this time of when ESD could expect, instead of would, could expect to move to a hybrid model. What do you think?
I think it works well, but could you add something saying like how many weeks in advance are the school district share with the parents that it's going to be opening? So parents and teachers and students will know, okay, I know that it's going to be implemented, or we are going to back to schools, and I'm going to know that like a month in advance or 3 weeks in advance, for sure.
Well, that's the problem, right? That Dr. Larson was saying is we can't really give a specific date because we don't know what's going to happen with the cases. I think, at least what I heard, and feel free, Dr. Larson, to jump in, what I heard is based on what we see with the cases, trying to make a prediction, but we can't promise because, if for example, the college kids go out and they have a giant gathering and now there's a huge increase again, we could say, oh, we're going to do hybrid in 3 weeks, but then, the cases shoot up, and then we have to go back to parents and say, well, we know we made this prediction and we said we were going to open, but now the cases in our county don't allow for that.
Could we perhaps think of language that says that we will not, a reassurance that school will not be opening or changing that for 3 weeks, right? It's sort of the same way when Dr. Larson says, well, for 2 weeks we haven't had a case, but the district schools don't move that quickly, so I can't imagine, Dr. Larson's gonna go on his red phone at night and say, Ginger, it's go, and the next day we're in AB, right? And we're like, all right, it's going to take us some time to transition to that, but maybe there's some language that we could do with a reassurance that where the data is sitting, we at this point can move forward with potentially opening up schools in 3 weeks. We're not going to do this before 3 weeks is out, or whatever that time is.
So how about something like that? That, even if the cases are coming down, we're going to say we're still going to give it 3 weeks to help us make that transition. And then we're on the assumption that they're going to stay down, but at least we're prepared. And if they go back up, then we just stay in distance. And if not, at least we've prepared for it.
Yep, sounds good.
Sorry, Meg, who's in line next to answer? Meg,
Well,
and then, sorry.
On the same, well, I like this language better than what you had before, but I would still say, I would say at the end, schools will stay in a distance learning model for 3 weeks before making a transition, or at least 3 weeks before making a transition. Because it's, again, it's committing to not change rather than committing to change.
Okay, how's that?
Yeah, that's the general idea that I think Jason and Mark were saying. Dr. Larson.
Okay.
Dan?
Yeah, I think that answers my question, because before you just said they'll stay in the distance model for the next 3 weeks, which kind of it should be after the review indicates that we are changing. and then before making, so, I mean, for the next 3 weeks, just kind of puts, it's not a very good sentence standing by itself. But yeah.
So give me the
before making-
language. What do you want?
After the decision is made.
It's always fun to write by
Good. We need to just do it.
Yeah.
So schools will stay in a distance learning model for at least the next 3 weeks. So how about something at the beginning then? We'll say, assuming that the number of cases are heading down, right?
Or maybe reaches the milestones or reaches the threshold limits. Or,
Close to the, let's just use it, right? The 75 per 100,000.
So just a point of order, I don't think that it is probably on our agenda to proofread or to wordsmith. It's just kind of my thought. So I don't know if the board, entertain the board to say, I think what was written was great. Ginger, thank you. If those that are concerned about the slight edits of it, if you want to follow up with Ginger individually, I don't know. I just feel like the meeting needs to go on. I don't think we should just wordsmith.
This is up for a vote tonight. This is an action item, and it,
Right, that's why I'm doing it.
right, so that has to be done. We need to be solid on this wording. I would
Okay.
stay away from putting those numbers in there. I would really shy away from that. I don't know. I guess I defer to Dr. Larson on that, but
Hold on, I'll put the acceptable threshold.
right, because I think this is going to be a changing situation. It's a pandemic. Nobody knows what's going on. Now we're back in fall. Can we assume best intention and we have clarity here for stakeholders? Do we have clarity now for parents and for teachers?
I think we have the clarity, but then by taking the 3 weeks off, I think what I would say is admin should have a good sense of how quick will it take to move back to the hybrid model. Like, and I'd say whatever that bare minimum is what we should post. And I think we should do that because I do think we leave a lot of people hanging, and I think that's a lot of anxiety, and I think that's hard on our community, our teachers, and our families. And I think it is our responsibility to do that.
Well, Ginger and admin, do you feel like that 3 weeks is adequate? And just so silently vote on Zoom as you try to scramble to do it. You're on mute, Ginger.
I feel good about this language. I think 3 weeks is fine. I think we've already put a lot of things in place. And I think also as we start to bring smaller groups of students in, even before we do hybrid, it's going to just get us all used to having kids in the building again, which will even make it more of an easier transition than it would be even if we had to start hybrid. So I'm hearing in general, we're good with this. We can wordsmith enough that we could put this in the document so that we could still vote on it tonight. Are we good with that?
Yes, I'm seeing agreement on that.
That's good. I like it.
Are there any other questions or clarifications before we open it for public comment? Okay. I am trying to be cognizant of time, and I realize that Dr. Larson is joining us. Tonight we are trying something new with public comment. Matt has put that document into the chat. Please add your name to it if you would like to make a comment to the board. After I am finished reading this soliloquy of the Public Records Act, then Matt will put on the screen a 1-minute timer. And if you prefer to raise your hand using the reactions, feel free to do that, please. Matt, was there anything else I should add on that? Did I forget anything?
Just that, because I noticed there's only one person who's put their name on the sheet, that during this comment period, public comment, it's only about the reopening plan.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. We will have a second public comment. This one is specific to the reopening plan. And as a reminder, the board cannot respond to public comment. However, Superintendent Haber and Dr. Larson can. All right, at this point, we are opening it up for public comment. Individuals wishing to be heard by the board will first be recognized by the chair. Individuals will be recognized within Zoom by using the icon to show they are raising their hand or by adding their names to the digital public comment document that is in the chat window. Individuals, after identifying themselves, please state your name and address for the record. Will proceed to make comments within the 3-minute time limit. In order to provide equal opportunity for comments, an individual's microphone will be turned off at the 3-minute time limit. The chair may interrupt or terminate an individual statement when it's too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. The board as a whole has a final decision in determining the appropriateness of all such rulings. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act 4230, agendas and topic must be set in advance of the meeting. Board members will not respond to public comment during the meeting. Additionally, comments can be submitted to the board at board@esd401.org. Currently, board, we do have one person who has added their name to the document. So at this time, the chair recognizes Donna Grassel.
Hi, Tasha. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that whole thing. My public comment is not about the reopening. It should probably come later. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. That's hilarious. Thank you, Donna. Man, I wish I was really good at accents so I could like change it up a bit, people. At this point, Matt, will you please put the timer on? If anyone would like to make a comment to the board, you still have 1 minute to raise your hand. You can do that by looking at the bottom of your screen. We will hold for 1 minute.
I've got Galaxy S8. I will take you off mute, or you're off mute.
My name is Joanne Tenney, district bus driver, Ellensburg. As far as the masks go for the students, requiring their parents to wash their mask every day, is there any possibility of getting disposable masks for them to have one each day? That's a question. Thank you.
And then I have Green Zimming. And he is off mute.
Matt, sorry to hear you. I think you said Adrian Zimney and she is off mute now.
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm here. Thanks, Tasha. Thank you, board. This is Adrian Zimney, parent in Ellensburg, Washington. And my two comments are regarding the reopening plan, are concerns that we still have not heard anything regarding the music programming for band, choir, orchestra, and then the other concern that I have in particular, I feel like I've been following these meetings, and what I'm still feeling kind of in the dark about, and I was hoping I would hear something, Ginger, in the plan, and I guess I'm not hearing it, is what the point of contact will be for each of the two plans for students in the virtual academy versus in the hybrid model now remotely, and you know, how those classes will be laid out. And I do appreciate and understand the 8 million steps in the process to getting there. So if that's coming soon, I just would appreciate some more clarification out to parents about actual scheduling, particularly for the secondary kids. Thank you.
Thank you for those two comments. Matt, what we did not go over in this plan was, now do we start the minute over?
That is correct.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay.
Now, if anyone else would like to make a comment to the board, you may also raise your hand.
I've got, is it Susan Gassler? And she's off.
Hi, this is Susie Gestalter, and I'm with Morgan Middle School. And I just wanted to say that the discussion about giving definite time frames, I know that for me, constantly living in the unknown is very stressful. So it's very helpful when there's a definite time saying this many weeks we are for sure in distance learning, and I can at least plan out those weeks. And then if I knew, okay, then at the end of those weeks, we'll be hearing more information about whether or not we are in hybrid or still remote. You know, at least for those beginning 4 weeks or 3 weeks or what have you, I can stop worrying about it for a while. Do you know what I mean?
Thank you for your comment. Does anyone else like to make a comment to the board? I do not see anyone else raising their hand. Matt, oh, we're starting the minute again, Matt.
I am looking and I'm not seeing anyone else raising their hand. I just want to make sure everyone has the opportunity.
We don't need to close this right now. That's fine. But is there anything that Ginger or Dr. Larson would like to respond to in that?
Yes. So Dr. Larson, could you talk a little bit about the difference between like a cloth mask and a paper mask in response to the question about, you know, giving kids cloth masks? We wouldn't be giving a new cloth mask every day, but could you just talk about the difference between those two for us, Dr. Larson?
Certainly cloth masks and paper masks have the ability to block droplets. So they both would be effective. There was some discussion recently about whether or not, other types of masks are helpful or not helpful. But the biggest issue is if you go with paper masks, and I use a paper mask sometimes and a cloth mask other times, then you've got the trash problem to deal with. I think having some opportunity to have a choice, let's say somebody really, it would be the last thing that you would want somebody to be doing other than not wearing a mask would be wearing the same cloth mask for 2 months at a time, for example. So I think you could go either way. You could certainly, I know through the Emergency Operations Center, if you choose to go a paper route, we can find a way to get the school districts some paper masks. So, I'd also like to just make a comment on Adrian's comment about band and choir and some of the extracurriculars. So when schools are not in session, such as above the 75, it's recommended not to have any extracurricular activities. That would include competitive sports and those type of things. We have been looking at choir and band, and I appreciate the documents that you've sent. They've been very helpful, as have the documents that I got from Central Washington University's Department of Music. Those things are still on the agenda, and certainly as soon as we can get into the hybrid model, getting those things scheduled, which obviously includes things like spreading kids out a little bit more and deciding what to do with choir, but it's high on people's lists of things that are important.
And Dr. Larson, we've talked a little bit about like choir and band. When we're able to go into a hybrid model, really the importance, like at Morgan Middle School and even at the high school, having those classes in a larger space, like choir, band being in Morgan Auditorium, with, you know, kids being taken off the stage and maybe sitting back from the stage, and trying to find some creative ways to still have those classes, but maybe just in a bigger space and not all the kids all together. Is that still your recommendation?
That's correct. And doing some of it outside, you know, doing some band things outside, and while the weather is still good. I think it can be done. It requires more thought in a time period where everything is requiring a lot of thought. But I'm still very supportive of those things.
Is there anything else that Superintendent Haber or Dr. Larson that you would like to clarify or answer? All right, board, at this time, we are going to, this ESD reopening plan is information, but it is tied to the next agenda item, which is the resolution. So does the board have any other clarifications or thoughts on the reopening school plan? Yes, Meg. Oh.
Okay. I don't mean to respond to public comment, but it does strike me that the 4-week look at the data and the 3-week horizon before opening are not consistent with each other. What you would want to do is say, if we're going to look at the data every month, we'll tell you what's going to happen for the next month, not we'll tell you what's going to happen for the next 3 weeks, because then at the end of the 3 weeks, you have to tell them something. So why not make them both 4 or 3, but the same as each other in that language we just created?
Does anyone have any opposition to making it 4 and 4? Admin, do you have any opposition to making it 4 and 4? Okay. So as noted, we can make it 4 and 4. Meg?
Pardon?
So we, with your recommendation, we will make it 4 weeks and 4 weeks. We'll
Great, thank you.
Okay. All right, then if there's any more questions and clarifications, we will move on to agenda item B. I want to thank Dr. Larson for his time and his commitment, both to coming to this meeting and for serving Kittitas County in such a selfless manner. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. I'm here to serve. Thanks.
Agenda item B is the resolution that is tied to this reopening school plan. It is 2008-20, the district reopening plan that will be submitted to OSPI. Is there anything else that you would like to add to that?
Yeah, and this reopening plan is also, this isn't, of course, just something we're just giving to OSPI. It really is going to be our grounding document that guides our actions in the district. And it's also will be posted right up front on our website, so anybody can go in and access it. So it really is a guiding document, just like our district improvement plan.
The chair will entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve the reopening plan.
I
second.
Dan has moved and Jason and Hilda have seconded. So I'll leave that up to Matt at that point. Is there any further discussion? All right, with a roll call vote, Hilda?
Aye.
Meg?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The resolution is accepted. Item C is the board calendar. This is an action item. This is the updated meetings for ourselves and the board. The chair will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the board meeting calendar as presented.
I'll second.
Meg has moved and Dan has seconded. Is there any further discussion? With a roll call vote, Dan,
Aye.
Jason,
Aye.
Hilda, and that's how you hold your space bar. It should work too.
Aye.
Thank you. Meg,
Aye, and welcome to the club, Hilda.
I also vote aye. The board calendar is updated or accepted. Sorry. Agenda item D is the resolution 210820. Would an admin like to describe this or do an intro on this? It is the contract for the non-represented classified personnel for the 2020-2021 school year. Ginger, you're on mute.
Ginger, you're muted.
Now I'm welcome to the club. Jim, would you like to just give them an overview of that, please?
Ginger, I didn't hear who you asked. Sorry.
Jim.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Resolution that you're looking at is for our non-rep contracts. They are our directors of transportation and food services and maintenance, and then our IT guys. That their contracts start as of September 1st. They go through August 31st.
And this is a standard thing we do every year. Is that
Yes,
correct?
it is. Mm-hmm.
I therefore move that we approve these contracts as presented.
Oh, second.
Meg has moved and Dan has seconded. Is there any further discussion? With the roll call vote, Dan?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Hilda?
Aye.
Meg?
Aye.
I also vote aye. That resolution is adopted. That puts us at agenda item A for business, the bond update that Damon, I'm sure, has been waiting for 2 hours to give to us so very patiently.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me participate tonight and give you an update on the bond and even more excitingly, update on construction. The sites out there are really transforming, and the landscape is looking drastically different than it has in the past. So pretty exciting stuff going on out there. Everything's been going well. I mean, you know, in construction, there's always little hiccups. That's just part of the deal. But for the most part, everything is moving forward full steam ahead, and we're making great progress out there. Matt, do you want to pull up the slides?
Yep. I have it up for you. You just tell me when to advance.
Okay.
Matt, they are not up, just so you know.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So what I wanted to do is I kind of wanted to start out with these renderings for each school. I'll go through each school one at a time here, but this is just a snapshot on where we're heading. And the reason why I wanted to put this up is because then when I'm going to go through and show you some real-time construction photos, and it's really cool to see the footprint and the site transforming into what you see on your screen right now. So again, you guys, this is nothing new. You have seen this before. This is the finished product. This is what we're moving towards when Mount Stewart is complete. Okay, next slide, Matt. Okay, so a little bit of progress on Cora. So the picture on the left and the picture on the right is utility work that has been going on Cora from the trail south to 15th Street. And in preparation to widen the street and do full improvements on the west side of Cora, we had to do some utility work as part of our project. And then the city actually approached us a while back and asked us if we would entertain doing some of their upgrades for them, which they will reimburse the district for. So we did some sewer work underneath what is now the shoulder of Cora, but eventually it'll be underneath possibly asphalt or sidewalk that'll be installed there. And then we are just getting ready to install some electrical work along there as well. So if you were to drive down Cora right now, it really gives you a sense of how wide Cora will be when it's done, because the entire right-of-way is exposed right now and has been being prepared with utilities and things like that. Next slide. And this is the site itself where the school is going. So there's been a lot of work ongoing out there as far as everything under the ground being installed. So all your electrical, your plumbing, water, all your utilities that are going to supply the school have been installed underground. And then the concrete footings and foundations have been installing, are nearly complete. That'll support the school. So they're working their way around the entire footprint of the school and making great progress. So this is getting ready for the structural steel that essentially will sit on top of this concrete. Next slide. Okay, so this is really cool. This is a drone photo of the school of Mount Stewart. And so what you start seeing is the footprint of the school. So at the very top of the photo, there's just a little bit of a white roof of an existing building. That is the existing gym at Mount Stewart that we are going to keep and not demolish. So you can really see, so the bottom of the picture is north, but it gives you a sense of the footprint of the building and the school, what it'll look like. You can see in the center there, the outline of the courtyard. Around the three sides are the wings of the school, and then upper left towards the existing Mount Stewart gym will be the new gym and cafeteria, that area up there. So like I said, it's really transformed out there. In these drone shots, our contractor, Garco Construction, they actually have a drone pilot, and he comes out about once every other week and flies his drone and takes some good photos, and there's links and things like that to access the photos, and all the information will be turned over to the district when the project's done as well. So off to the right there, lower right, you can see that's kind of the nature area, and it gives you a real good sense of how close the school will be connected to that nature area as well. Okay, next slide. Okay, wanted to move on to the new elementary school. So this is up obviously north of the trail, and this is Cora that's running north and south here. So again, just wanted to kind of give an overall view of the picture of the school footprint, and then we'll go through the photos. You can start seeing this take shape as well. Next photo. So Cora is now actually has been constructed through the John Wayne Trail, and that's what these pictures are looking at. The picture on the left was when we kind of started that connection between the north and south of the trail, and then the picture on the right is actually looking from the south of the trail north through the trail. And there's actually been some photos or some work that's even been done since these photos have occurred. And when you're driving down Cora and heading north, you can see all the way through the trail now and all the way to the north end of the property that the new school will sit on. So it's really, I was just out there today, and I'm still not used to it when I'm driving down Cora and I can see through there. It really makes a difference the way that looks. And what was actually most surprising for me is, and I think some other people, is we did grade the trail down ever so slightly, and Cora does rise in grade ever so slightly to go across the trail, but it's so subtle it really looks like Cora just kind of flows through naturally, and you don't even really notice a huge transition there. We are keeping the trail open the entire time that construction's ongoing. The pedestrians utilizing the trail have the right of way. We have signage warning them, obviously, that we are doing construction. And then we have signage for all construction personnel. When they pull up to cross, they do have to stop, and then they can proceed. So our goal is to leave that open and not have to close that trail for an extended period of time. There may be half a day or something as we get closer to the finish line where we're doing pavement or something where we have to close it down for short periods of time. But for now, it is remaining open for pedestrians. Okay, next slide. These are just a couple of photos. So what we basically had to do to prepare the site for the new school is there's a mix of good dirt up there and bad dirt. Good dirt is good for building on, bad dirt obviously is bad for building on. So what we did is essentially removed all the bad dirt from where the school is sitting, and we took good dirt from the existing site and we swapped them. So we moved the bad dirt to an area that we took the good dirt out of to put it there, and the contractor spread all the dirt, the good dirt out, compacted it, leveled it, prepared it for the start of construction on the new school, which will be on the next slide. So again, you'll notice these are looking real similar to Mount Stewart, just not quite as far as progressed because there is that lag between the two schools. We're roughly, I would say, 5 to 6 week stagger, which is kind of the way it was always planned, to have a little bit of stagger. And then the left picture, you can see that looks real similar to what Mount Stewart looked like. So except for you don't actually see the concrete, it's just the form work right now to accept the concrete. And then again, in the picture on the right, another drone shot, but instead of the entire footprint of the school being laid out, we're only seeing a portion of the footprint of the school. So again, it's all the kind of the same process on the new school that we'll be doing on Mount Stewart. It's just has that stagger and a little bit of lag there. The other thing going on the new school is the installation of all that underground utilities I talked about on Mount Stewart that's already installed. They're in the process of doing that on the new school here as well. Next slide. Okay, so some behind the scenes stuff. I already went through all the cool stuff, and this is just kind of the paperwork items that are behind the scenes. So the D9s have been submitted to SPI. We hope to have the D10 back from them soon. And as I explained in the last board meeting, once we receive that D10, we're kind of done with the D-form process until the project closes out. So that'll be a good milestone as well. And then the GMP amendment will be signed by the contractor after the D10 is received, and that's a requirement of OSPI that we can't sign that amendment until we receive the D10. We've been working with OSPI actually over the last few days, back and forth, just clarifying and answering some questions for them so they can produce that paperwork. And product submittal. So this is part of construction as well, where the contractor starts submitting basically catalog data or samples, things like that, of products that will be installed for the school. So right now, the submittals are more the long lead items and things that they're going to be installing, and then next couple phases of work. And as the project goes on, those product submittals will turn to be some exterior finishes and interior finishes and things like that. So it's a continual process through the entire construction process, but behind the scenes, all those product submittals are coming in. They're being reviewed by the architects and the district, and selections are being made and decisions are being made. And that's kind of how we pick what will be installed in school. A lot of it's specified, and the contractor doesn't have a lot of wiggle room on some of it. Some of it they have a little more, but they have sort of some parameters to work within, and that's just a normal process. And then next steps on site. So this is kind of what is going to happen the next couple of weeks that you'll start seeing if you drive out to the site. So structural steel, we're supposed to be receiving all of our structural steel. I was told today it was this coming Friday for Mount Stewart, and concrete foundation and footing work was actually completed today. They had another concrete pour out there today. So you will actually start seeing structural steel going vertical, standing on top of the concrete out of the ground. And that's really kind of a cool milestone as well, because we've done all our prep, we've done all our footing foundation work, and now the construction of the actual school above that will start taking place. So it'll go quick. Structural steel usually goes up really quick compared to how much steel that you have in the amount of time frame. So it'll start transforming really quick. And then on the new school, continuation of those underground utilities and foundation walls, again, just like Mount Stewart, and a little bit of lag there. So that is all I have for my presentation. Stephen Clark with Integris is also on the line, and he is going to talk about and give an update on Lincoln, because Lincoln's in a completely different phase. We're kind of back where we started with the two new schools, with going through the schematic design process and starting the design there. So I will turn it over to Stephen, and then after he's done, if the board has any questions, I'll be happy to answer any of those.
Hey, good evening. Nice to see you all again. This is a pretty quick update, and is mostly informational. We don't have a ton of pretty pictures to show yet, as we're still working through the big picture items. But where we are now is we've completed the ed specs, which allowed us to develop the program for the building, what goes in it, and all of the parts and components. OAC has been working through several contractors to get us geotech reports and surveys that our engineers will be able to use to develop the work for the project. And then most importantly, what we've been doing for the past several weeks after the ed spec's been completed is working with our design build partner, Darko, who is obviously building the other schools, and you all selected to work on Lincoln Elementary as well. They've been a great partner, and we've been working back and forth to develop concepts and then test those against our budget. And you can kind of see down there in the bottom, we've been working back and forth, and we actually made some progress today this week in terms of verifying that the budget does take into account the bond program that was projected and promised. So we're on track there. In terms of cost validation, that's exactly what we're doing, is making sure we're matching the concepts there. So Matt, if you could go ahead and scroll down to the next page. Really what we've been doing both last week and this week, we've been in town working with Dale at the maintenance department and Brian Aiken and Angie and the team there at the district to verify the scope of the building. So we've been going through just taking into account all the various systems and verifying what has to be done in the existing building in terms of providing new mechanical systems, retrofitting the classrooms, and providing new finishes throughout. So we've been able to nail down some of those costs, and that's helped us to verify what's left for the addition. So if we scroll on down, Matt, to the final page here, just some examples of the type of work and what Ginger and some of the other members of the team got some more previews today. But we've been working through some, you're seeing some colored schemes there, and that's by no means a concept that we're working forward on too far. We are basically, that's what we've been using to take the program and test the program to make sure everything fits. We've found some challenges, we've found some surprises and some opportunities. And we're also kind of digging in there. What you see on the right there is our structural engineer. We've been working on the requirements and the possibilities for the seismic upgrades for the building to confirm what we need to do by code and what we need to make suggestions or recommendations on as our scope for that portion of the work. So all of that is in progress, and we're hoping in a few weeks here to have a fully validated and consolidated concept to present to the board in terms of this schematic design with some real pretty pictures and images and plans that all make sense. So we're crunching along and enjoying the process. So happy to answer any questions if you have any at this time, but that's it for me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen and Damon. Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead, Meg.
One for Stephen, one for Damon. I guess I'll start with Stephen since he spoke last. So your diagrams make it appear that you have decided to put a building at the end of the existing gym. Is that true, or is it conceptual what you're saying?
That diagram was very early in terms of just testing our program to come up with the concept. So that's why it was real small there for everybody here. But that is the direction that we're pursuing at this time based on our schedule and some of the challenges with the other end of the site. So that looks like the most likely location for the new gym, and that's what we're pursuing now.
Bye bye, Ski Hill. Well, anyway, and for Damon, you mentioned there being a lag between the two schools as intended, the two schools that you were dealing with. But earlier in our study session, Ginger mentioned an opening for the new school in November 21. Does that mean we're behind schedule, or might we make it up, or what?
So yeah, we are a little bit behind schedule overall with the new school. There was some delays there with some of the permitting process we did and some of the water we encountered and things like that. There was always going to be a little bit of lag in the schools. Just because it was more efficient to build them a little bit offset than at the same time. We kicked around the idea of what it would take to make that up. Unfortunately, what had happened with COVID, that was right when we were having all these conversations. What we felt and the team made a decision on is the risk reward at that time and what we knew, if we were going to try to accelerate this thing and get it back on track, the fear was when school started up, or even with the unknowns at the time, if COVID would derail us again down the road. So we didn't want to go throw a bunch of extra dollars and effort to try to make up some lost time with just the possibility of being able to lose it again in the future. So we decided to work with the cards we were dealt, and if we can accelerate and gain time on the schedule with the normal construction schedule, that is what we would like to do. But the decision to do overtime scenarios and things like that to try to catch that up with the possibility of just losing all that time again, that was a decision that the team decided to stick with.
So presumably that, like everything else, is subject to change.
Pardon, I wasn't able to understand that.
Presumably that decision, like everything else, is subject to change, like everything else these days.
That is correct.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? All right, I am not seeing any. Thank you, Damon and Stephen, for coming and sharing that. Oh, yes, okay, good. I'm seeing, I was worried there. We are good on the questions and comments. Thank you for doing that. It's always great to see those pictures, and it's fun to see where Lincoln's going to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Board, on to the financial report from Mr. Brian Aiken.
Thank you, board members. Anyway, we have June financial reports for you to view, and it's very interesting. We've been following our monthly reports closely with respect to COVID since about March, and we've been looking for those quote savings that we've been hearing about because of COVID, and they finally started showing up in our fiscal reports here in the month of June. And what's interesting is we were on a Zoom with all the other business folks within the ESD 105 area today, and they are really seeing pretty much the same thing. And the reason is OSBI really held us harmless and made us whole for the rest of the year, because they continued to fund our full enrollment even though students weren't attending in person. They continued to fund transportation and things like that too. And so we really didn't see the revenue decline, but we are now starting to see the expenditures decline a bit. And that would make sense because you're not seeing busing costs, you're not seeing a lot of substitution costs, you're not seeing supplies being purchased for ongoing educational reasons and things like that. And so as you look at your reports, I don't know if you can go to page 3 of your report that shows the fund balance graph. We've spent the last 3 months, March, April, May, with about $1.8 million to $1.7 million decline from last year's position during the same month, if you can see that. Well, in June, it dropped to just about $1.2 million. And so we had an improvement in our fund balance. And I'm happy to see that, because we also spent time today talking about next year and what we're going to be facing with funding interruptions due to COVID. And the state is now faced with an $8 billion shortfall over the next 3 years. And they're giving us hints and signs that we could be looking at some negative adjustments. And one of them could be transportation. I mean, we talked almost for 2 hours today on how do you prove to the OSBI that you are transporting students if they are at virtual, and so these are discussions that OSBI is having with our legislature and our governor right now. The way it works, for example, is we get paid based on 3 different count dates, and so we do a count in spring, and then that is the account that then pays us for the first 4 months of the new school year. So from September to December, we will get paid for about 1/3 of our transportation costs based on last spring's numbers. Well, if for example, if we were to stay virtual all year, then we wouldn't have any students to count, except for perhaps students with IEPs and special education. We wouldn't have students to count then for the rest of the school year. The fear and concern is we could only get 1/3 of our transportation funding. And so they're trying to work out those scenarios, because the current law doesn't mix with what we're actually facing. And the only thing I'm a little bit worried about is our legislators are communicating back to us. They don't seem to have the desire to want to try and bail us out again. They're still McCleary wary, and it doesn't sound like they're going to be too excited to try and fund some extra hold harmless monies for us in light of their expected $8 billion shortfall that they're going to be facing. And so I'll update you as we learn more and as we get responses back from them. And so anyway, that's what I was able to learn as of today. And as we know, it changes daily. And then elsewhere in the report, we did make our June bond interest payment as scheduled on June 1. If you look at your report, we'll have received about 99% of our revenue and spent about 99% of our expenditures, and that's pretty easy to do on that one, because we have fixed schedules of which we're paying back monthly bond interest and principal. Let's see. The other thing I wanted to update you on is we've started our discussions with our bond experts on when to release the $9.5 million in additional bond funding to finish completion of our new elementary schools. And so the team is working on the best timing. And what was really some good news in all of this is that typical interest rates on bonds are in the 3.5% to 5%, somewhere in that window. And right now, current interest rates are at 0.7, so they're less than 1%. And then and it's not anticipated that those rates are going to change before the end of the year. And so what they're telling us is that the rates should stay down. And those rates are far lower than what we worked into our long-term scenarios on the debt service fund. So the other bit of good news is that housing prices and therefore the relationship to our assessed value has tended to stay high across the state, and in some cases 8 to 10% increases are being forecast. When we were concerned that due to COVID and the hardships on our community and folks out of work, that we may see a decline in assessed values, but those that have shared preliminary estimates in other counties are finding that numbers are still up, and so that just gives us that much more wiggle room to make our promise to our voters of $4.50 a thousand or less for all of our levies. That includes our bonds, our maintenance, our M&O levy, and then our capital technology levy. So anyway, I thought that was good news to hear, and I will keep you posted. Because we kept it under 10 million on purpose so that it gives us the option to go do a bank qualified issue and perhaps just go to bid and see who wants to purchase our 9.5 million. It can happen sooner, but it's not necessarily the best way to go, given that the interest rates are so low. There's we'll have to see what recommendations come back from Mark Pressing and John Gores and Corey Plager on the team that are working, for a recommendation for us. So that's all I have for reports. So that's not true. I got some questions from Meg, and I will try and answer your questions, Meg, as best I can. You asked about a couple of voucher questions. A new filtering solution. It was a payment of $55,000 on page 5. Those were tech levy items, and if you want, I can pursue Mike Welch to give me a little more information on them. But it was for tech levy purchases. And then you asked about the $213,000 payment to Central Washington University. So $2,200 of that was for the preschool rental. For the lease, and $211,000 was for a partial running start payment, and we were expecting the running start invoices. Okay, the next one was $42,000 to paint Valley View. Yes, this was a planned project as of last summer. If you recall, we knew we were going to replace or remodel 3 of our elementary schools, and we wanted to take the opportunity in our maintenance budget that remained to fix up and repair Valley View. And so they got their brand new roof, an entirely new roof last year, and then the second phase of that was to completely repaint their school building this summer, and it's all finished except for we have the portables to finish. So that's what that was for. The payment of $15,000 to Northwest Educational, I don't know what that is, but it's for MAPS assessments, and you learned a little bit about the MAPS assessments from Jan earlier today. And then you had a question about a $1,518 payment that was made in my name. Again, somebody used a credit card for a payment, and they used my credit card for making that payment. That happens when there are certain vendors that will not accept a purchase order or any other form. So that's what that was for. I think I got them all.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions or clarification? All right, thank you, Brian.
All right, thanks.
All right, board reports. And I would like to start with student reports. I know I'm moving up a little bit, but I do believe that Olivia and Jade did want to make a report tonight. Jaden, I see your name, so I'm just gonna go with that. Would you like to make a report tonight?
Sure. So unfortunately, Olivia had to leave us to attend to some family matters, and we just wanted to bring up what we had the ability to discuss with Superintendent Haberer on August 10th, and more about what the Student Senate is trying to do this year. And a quick overview of that is just COVID safety and leading by example for students, because I know sometimes it's hard to take in information from adults when you're young and rebellious, or however you want to describe it. And then Olivia brought up trying to, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? But to continue Mackenzie's legacy by the international connections that we have with our sister city in Japan. And we also talked about bringing on some 8th grade representatives into the Student Senate, because they will eventually be in high school sooner than we think. And finally, I have been spending my summers with Gallery 1, and they have wanted to bridge the gap with middle school and high school students and providing them an outlet for art. So I'd love to have a partnership between the district and the gallery, and have the gallery support whatever district art needs there may be. And that's all I have. So if you have any questions or want any further explanation, you can email me or we can talk about it now.
Thank you. It's very forward thinking. I especially look forward to 8th graders being introduced their voice early on in the process. Thank you. It's very exciting to hear what you guys have planned.
Thank you.
Legislative report.
Can you believe I don't have a report? I hope I didn't miss something. Ginger, if I missed something, let me know, but I have no report.
I want to turn something. The State Board of Education released their interim report on mastery-based learning, and also where they're going with the pathways to high school graduation. And that's on the State Board of Education site, and then they will be doing supposed to be doing their final report to legislators in December. But there are some big changes that were sort of broadcast in that Core 24 and Pathways to Graduation. So that was the State Board of Education. Sorry, Jason. Okay. Early learning, Mr. Schisler.
Yeah, I have just a reminder. There is a YouTube site that's accessible on the Chromebooks. It's just my name basically as a, you type that into the, and there are almost 200 now books, readings of various kinds, and there's categories from K3 all the way through high school. They range widely in what's there, and adult stuff too, that's things like the Constitution and the history of the Pledge of Allegiance, and a lot of interesting stuff. So I'm wanting to make sure that the teachers know this is available. It'll stay on there. I don't know how to get it off anyway, but it'll stay on the YouTube for, I don't know, like I said, I don't know how to stop it anyway. So it's on there. Use it during the school year if you want readings for the kids. It's always on there too. So you don't need to be a subscriber, and it doesn't cost anything. And that was in place of the reading in the park for this summer, because obviously we weren't out there in the parks. So just hopefully some people will listen to stories.
Was that your full report, Dan? Yeah. Thank you for that. Just so you know, Dan, you should jump into one of those digital citizenship class. It's there forever. You can never get that off. Teaching
I'll have to change my name, I guess.
You're done. Someone's gonna come forward and they're gonna give you the digital citizenship class for the first graders. It's there forever now. Teaching and learning. Meg, did you have anything you wanted to add? Because you're also in there too, somewhat. Yeah, no, you're like, okay. So we are good on board reports. The superintendent's report, please.
So for my report tonight, I'd like to share with you what I'd like to put together, hopefully in September, but it may not happen until October. I'm planning on putting together a superintendent parent council. I worked with a parent group like this for 4 years in my last district, and the purpose is really just to build strong relationships with parents across the district. I'm going to encourage and work with principals to try to get 5 to 10 parents from each building and meet with them on a monthly basis. And the beauty of Zoom is you can have more people together than trying to put everybody in a big room. And so we'd be touching on topics like the budget, just kind of checking in overall, how's distance learning going for parents? You know, are there some insights that we should be considering at a district level? Also one of the board members mentioned, I think Dan, it was you, about the parent education, and that is really a good opportunity to inform even a smaller group of parents that they can go out then and share with parents they're connected to about the Schoology and Edgenuity and how to use those digital resources, and also to update them on what we're doing around social emotional learning, get ideas from them, maybe how things are going for their students that also help to inform our practice. It's really to strengthen, we kind of talked about, I think it was at our last board meeting, that feedback loop and really wanting to have a strong feedback loop. And so I'm excited about that. Again, I did this in my last district. I had about 50 parents in that group that came pretty consistently. And it was awesome. I mean, I just got so many great insights from parents. And so I look forward to putting that together.
Thank you. All right, at this time, we're opening up public comment again. I do see that we have one person on it. Please, if anyone else would like to make a public comment, you may add your name to the list, which is also that doc that you can click on, or you may also raise your hand. As Matt gets that ready, I do get to read this again. Individuals wishing to be heard by the board will first be recognized by the chair. Individuals will be recognized within Zoom by using the icon to show they are raising their hand, or by adding their names to the digital public comment document that is in the chat window. Individuals, after identifying themselves by stating their name and address for the record, will proceed to make comments within the 3-minute time limit. In order to provide equal opportunity for comments, an individual's microphone will be turned off at the 3-minute time limit. The president may interrupt or terminate an individual statement when it's too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. The board as a whole has the final decision in determining the appropriateness of all such rulings. In accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act 4230, agendas and topic must be set in advance of the meeting. Board members will not respond to public comment during the meeting. Additionally, comments can be submitted to the board at board@esd401.org. That email is also in the chat box in case someone would like to submit that way. At this point, the chair recognizes Donna.
Hello, my name is Donna Grassel, 200 Cedar Cove Road in Ellensburg. I wear a couple of different hats in this community, but tonight I'm speaking to you as a community member. I wanted to talk for just a couple of minutes, for 3 minutes exactly, about the tiered starts that Mr. Engel spoke about earlier in the study session. So first of all, Meg, you're correct. The times that Mr. Engel was presenting were the times that students would be in class. So previous to that, staff members would be there a half hour earlier. So where students would be there at 7:30, staff would be there at 7 o'clock. requiring them to drop off their own young children at daycare at 6:45. That is not a possibility in this community at this time. So while I hear that people are working on that, I have yet to see any concrete action along those lines. In addition, there's a child care issue at the end of the day where older students who get out around 4 o'clock would typically take care of their younger siblings, but they get out around 2 o'clock. So we're creating a significant hardship for the families in our community by proceeding with this. In addition, there's an equity issue. Jason, I heard you talk about equity. I'm not sure what your equity definition is, but I can send you a visual that shows what I believe equity is all about, where it represents the difference between equality, equity, and liberation. And as I see it, when we start truncating bus routes, we're creating an equity issue. In my neighborhood, if you start at the McDonald's and you start driving out Umptanum and up Monastash Road, it would take you about 5 miles to get right out here by me, the corner of Cove and Monastash, 5 miles. If you drive an additional 7.5 miles, you get up to Lazy F Ranch, and that's where the furthest child on that route is right now. They're talking about moving this bus route right down here to Cove and Monastash. So that family that lives up there, if they have an elementary child, they would drive that child to the bus 7.5 miles, and then they would drive home. If they also have a secondary child, they would drive that child 7.5 miles, and then they would drive home. That's 30 miles in the morning and an additional 30 miles in the afternoon. I think that's creating a hardship for families in our community. This problem definitely could be solved by creating elementary boundaries. I completely agree with you. What I do not agree with is that this, right now in the middle of COVID, is the time that we should be talking about truncating bus routes to that level and creating that kind of hardship for families in our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. If anybody else would like to make a comment to the board, you now have 1 minute to raise your hand. That is down there at the bottom of your screen. Thank you, Matt. Thank you. At this point, we are closing public comments. Next is proposed items for future consideration. Does any board member have a proposed item for future consideration?
I think that transportation was mentioned in the study session. So as that report came up, so I do think I looked to Brian. I think Brian made some comments about the timeline of when we should be looking at this for future, especially with the new schools and the zoning and so forth. So I think it looks like that might be a little ways out, but I just don't want that to get lost. And I really look to admin to say, when would it make sense for us to do that? We really want, I do believe in the lens of equity, and I do really want to make sure that we are thinking about our community when it comes to this topic. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. As we had that report in study session, and as we asked those questions back and forth, it became clear that we were moving that forward. So that one is moving forward, and that conversation is going forward with administrators. So yes, that one is up there for future. Does anyone else have anything proposed for future?
I just don't want us to lose track of the transparency policy.
Yep. Also, That one was in the study session, so we do have the transparency policy work that is moving forward, and that is Jason and Hilda who are working on that. So.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I think I can do this here. So Hilda, I will email you and see if we can meet virtually or whatever works best for us, just kind of touch base and then report back to the board. So thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Was there anyone else who would like to put anything forward for future consideration? Okay, board, we do have an executive session tonight. You did receive that Zoom link in your email. For people who are joining us on this meeting, the board will be going to executive session. When we come back from executive session, we will be closing out the meeting. There will not be any further discussion or action taken. Ginger, about how long do we want to put for executive?
Let's try 15 minutes.
Oh my goodness, I'm gonna add 5 minutes to that because I have to pop in and out. So
I know. All right, we'll say 20 minutes.
So we'll say 20 minutes.
Yes.
And
Can you
is in
clarify?
regard to Matt?
Yes, please clarify the reason.
Yes, I want to clarify that reason. I want to make sure I have that letter of distinction. Ginger or Kim, can you help me on that?
It's for bargaining or negotiations.
So it's C.
Thank you, C. That's what I was looking for, C. For bargaining negotiations, the board will be in executive session for 20 minutes. Board members, that link is in your email. Okay.
Yeah. Ginger's, I mean, worst case scenario, print out the minutes that say it's all through with all their stuff.
Who are we missing?
Besides me. Hilda, Dan, May.
Can you sign it?
No, no.
Get Jimmy to sign it, and then if we can just get you and Dan to stop by.
Yeah, we should get Dan and stop out and remind them that we've got documents. We've got other documents.
I have to get that done by the end of next week or so.
Okay. I'll get them for Friday.
The board is still in executive session. We are going to add 10 minutes. The time that I have right now is 9:10. So we're going to add 10 more minutes to the executive session. They didn't want to be the first person back because I'm always the first person back and I have to stay here because everyone gets lost in the Zoom hallways. The board is out of executive session and is coming back. Okay, Ginger's connecting. I think that the entire board is present. We do have a quorum. So next up is the board calendar.
I have something as a reminder for the board calendar. And that is next Wednesday on the 26th, there is a joint meeting with the city. That is on your, you all should be invited to that. I have not received an agenda back from the city yet, but once that is received, then they'll be posted and distributed. But I just wanted to make sure because that's outside of our regular meeting.
Yes, thank you. I saw that invite in my calendar. Thank you. Does anyone have a question about that joint meeting?
Just a comment, I will be in Bozeman.
Did you want to join
It's
it?
going to be, oh, actually, I'll be on the way to Bozeman, I think. Well, what time is the meeting at 7 or 6:30? So what, 6 o'clock?
Yes.
If I'm there already, I should be able to get in on it, but I may not be.
Okay, you can let one of us know, Dan, on that day how travel goes for you.
Okay, it's a 9-hour drive, so if we if we don't get started early, I won't be there.
Okay, understandable. Any other clarification on the board calendar? All right, clarification and next steps. I think we're good. Matt will be awesome and corral all of us and get those documents signed. Thank you for doing that, Matt.
Yes, I just wanted to point out there is one piece that's vitally important, and I need to get as many signatures as possible. I understand that Meg won't be here, but Dan and Hilda, if you could please stop in. I need to make sure that the budget is signed because it has to be submitted to ESB 105.
I will do that. I'll text you and email you and stop by to sign it.
Perfect. I'm here from 7:30 to 4:30. So.
I can't really hear you, Matt, but I cannot get there.
Yeah,
So
no, I understand. No, I will use the meeting minutes to justify your
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right, so we have a plan for that. Matt is in the building from 7:30 to 4:30. All right, you guys, with the motion, we can adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All right, you guys, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.